Prime Minister Narendra Modi will attend the 16th BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia. He's going there at the invitation of Russian President Vladimir Putin. The summit begins tomorrow. Now, the Prime Minister is attending the BRICS summit at a time when he's facing diplomatic pressure from the Five Eye Western Bloc led by the US over the Indian government's alleged involvement in an assassination attempt in the US and also killing of a Canadian national in Canada, which the US and Canada believe is carried out by Indian agencies. Now, this comes despite India being a partner in the Quad and in other groupings. So, will India actually look at the BRICS summit to offset Western pressure? Can the BRICS, in fact, create a new world order which gives a bigger voice to the global South? Joining me to discuss this today are Dr. Swasti Rao, Associate Fellow at the MPIDSA, Ambassador Deepak Vora, former Indian diplomat. In the studio, I have with me my colleague Anthony Rosario. But first, I want to go over to Alexandra Berman, who's the head of South Asia and the Middle East Department of TV BRICS International Media Network. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the News9 Plus show. Alexandra, I want to start by asking you this, to just set it up for us. The BRICS summit begins tomorrow. It comes at a very interesting time in geopolitics of the world, battle between the East and the West, of course. Tell us about why Kazan was chosen for the BRICS 2024 summit. It's 1,000 kilometers east of Moscow. Why not Moscow or St. Petersburg? Does this actually signify Russia's eastern shift towards China and India?
Hello, Sandeep. Thank you for having me here. It's a big honor to be here today at the News9 Plus show. And thank you for the questions. It's an actually interesting thing that so far none of the summits of BRICS that were held in Russia were held in Moscow and St. Petersburg. In 2015, we had a summit which was held in Ufa city, which is the capital of Bashkortostan Republic.
Right.
And in 2009, the first BRICS summit was held in Yekaterinburg, the capital of Sverdlovsk region. So Russia showcases remarkable diversity of these regions. I think it's one of the things that India and Russia shares, actually. And it shows that not only Moscow, not only the capital of the country can be the venue for such a large-scale international event, but also that our regions are also capable of doing that. So first thing that I want to mention is that Tatarstan is a very well-developed region. It is one of the most developed regions in terms of economy, if we speak about Russian regions. And that is the first thing. Second thing is that Tatarstan showcases Russia's diversity in terms of culture and religion as well, because as we know that Tatarstan is a very multi-confessional region.
Yes.
And it showcases Russia's pluralism, which can also be said about the BRICS group in general.
Absolutely. Tatarstan being a showcase for the diversity that the BRICS summit, in fact, stands for. And, a quick follow-up question, Alexandra, to what you just told us. How is Prime Minister Modi perceived in Russia? This is the second visit that Prime Minister Modi is going to undertake to the Russian Federation in just 3 months. How do the Russian people generally perceive Prime Minister Modi?
So Prime Minister's visits to Russia this year, they generate immense interest not only from the expert community, but also from the general public as well.
Yes.
And as we remember, the first visit of Prime Minister was the first official visit of Mr. Modi after he was re-elected. So it also says something about India-Russia relations. Well, I completely agree that our leaders share very warm, close, and friendly relations between each other in a personal level. And we can see it at the official meetings, at non-official meetings. They are always held in a very friendly and amicable manner.
Absolutely,
So,
yes.
Well, what I want to say about the perception of Prime Minister Modi by Russian audience is that from here we can clearly see that the ability of Prime Minister to maintain balance in foreign policy when we speak about cooperation of India with its foreign partners,
Yes.
by prioritizing the interest of India and of its people as well. And from the Russian side, we can see great respect and understanding of this policy.
Absolutely.
And both to the country and to Prime Minister, as he is the major, the person who represents the country.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Alexandra. I'm going to follow that up with a question to Ambassador Deepak Vora. Ambassador Vora, timing of Prime Minister Modi's visit to Russia. He's under tremendous pressure. If you look at it internationally from the headlines, if you're looking at Canada, the United States, Pannun, Niger, Khalistan, gangsters, and all of that. India is supposedly involved in all kinds of international conspiracies against the gallant Five Eyes countries. You see this as a coincidence that all of these allegations come at a time when Prime Minister Modi is headed to Russia for his BRICS summit, and it's his second visit to Russia, incidentally, in 3 months.
Always a pleasure to be with you on your amazing channel. Of course, you are brilliant the way you put it across. I was listening to you and to our colleague who spoke earlier, and then you have Dr. Rao and our other colleague. You don't need me. These people are outstanding in every which way. Let me just very quickly, if you give me a couple of minutes, quick refresher.
Sure.
You know, when the Second World War ended, the international political and financial architecture that was designed, what was it? It was developed dominant and developing dependent.
Right.
So when we created rackets like the United Nations, the IMF, the World Bank, they all created to perpetuate this system. However, by the turn of the century, the developing nations, with a few exceptions, realized that we are still where we were when decolonization gave us independence. We began to look for a new paradigm. Then China came along, you know, in shining armor on a white horse, but it flattered to deceive. Was seen as a ruthless predator. So by the mid-2010s, the search began again. And who turned out to be the most reliable and trustworthy development partner? It is India. Bharat has the required political, economic, demographic, and technological strength. That's why everybody and his grandmother and the grandmother's neighbor wants to join this organization. I call it the Info Wali Sanstha, BRICS. Fortunately, it's not called Stones, otherwise you would have had a lot of memes around this place. Now, what we are seeing today, therefore, sir, with, of course, one is the bilateral relationship between India and Russia, which is progressing a bit. This morning, a few hours ago, I was physically present when the Prime Minister spoke to a group of eminent people. Let me assure you, there was no tension on his face. He didn't appear stressed, nor is India stressed. The fellows who are trying to create trouble are these guys with the one eye. No, 5 people are supposed to have 10 eyes, but these guys have only 5 eyes. So these one-eyed fellows with 5 eyes, 6 legs, 7 noses, 8 heads, whatever they are, these characters. I mean, this kind of nonsense doesn't impact him. Let me put it to you again. You mentioned the word Khalistan. Sir, I come from the Punjab. Not more than 50 people in my wonderful state have even, care about Khalistan. If there is an issue, it's going to be in Canada. They had better deal with it because the thing is going to come to bite them. I mean, the monster that Frankenstein created is coming to bite them and coming very, very quickly. In fact, it's already started. So what we are going to see in Kazan, the beautiful capital of Tatarstan, by the way, I've spent some time there. The mosque is totally amazing. And the people just so pleasant. That's why he's doing it. Now, there's one other reason. You heard about this joker from Ukraine. We call him the clown of Kiev. He's going to say they are doing it in Kazan because my missiles can hit Moscow and I will do it. The fellow has lost his marbles. So he's moving 1,000 kilometers to the east. You're going to probably have something like this coming out from the fellow. He's like an unguided missile that doesn't work. So my feeling is, sir, that this is going to focus on what BRICS is meant to do, an alternative. It's an alternative to the Western dominated system. Plus, the Prime Minister will use this opportunity to again hug Vladimir Putin, and Vladimir Putin loves to be hugged by Narendra Modi. Mr. Putin gave an interview just this morning, which I saw, which said he is my trusted friend and so on, and brother, all kinds of wonderful things he said. So I see the benefits coming to this, and sir, as they say in Hindi, if you don't mind, jalta zamana hai to jalne de, party ko yun hi baby chalne de. It's quite
absolutely. I have a question, Alexandra, I'm going to translate that for you later. But Anthony, before I come to you, I'm just going to ask Dr. Rao this. Dr. Rao, I've heard this description of the BRICS summit as being a buffet, as opposed to a set course dinner where everyone sits down and they're served. Someone decides the menu and then the person comes and he serves them the menu. And as opposed to that, the BRICS is a buffet. You can pick and choose what you want from the menu, right? And obviously that possibly is an issue there, because some countries, some very key partners, partner countries like China and India have very serious differences, especially on the border issues. So a lot of commentators say that economics is what is going to drive the partner countries of BRICS, the economies of all these countries. The fact that, you know, the BRICS is primarily an economic forum. It's got a combined GDP of what, $29 trillion, 27% of the global GDP, in fact. How do you see these countries pushing the economic agenda at Kazan? Do you see that as becoming, you know, an alternative to the Western-led institutions?
Well, Sandeep, so thank you for your question and thanks for having me here. And after all the strategic humor and the brilliance that Ambassador Bora brings out every time, I mean, there's very little left to speak. But yes, you asked me a specific question, which is on the economic vision.
Yes.
So, well, on the one hand, we have to understand that if there's any grouping in the world today that has both China and India, by default, it is going to be, a grouping with huge economies and a lot of population, and in that sense, a lot of geopolitical traction.
Yes.
But I think we just need to be a little careful about pushing a common economic agenda. Honestly, if you see carefully, you don't really have a common economic agenda. I mean, there are countries in the region like China and Russia, and Russia and India bilateral ties are separate from this. But if you look at the BRICS forum, if you look at the rest of the countries who are pally with China, and especially the way China looks at this entire BRICS expansion, right? I mean, you do know that India is there because India is wanting to have its multipolar base, to expand its economic outreach to Middle East and beyond, and also remain in the grouping so that the global south does not really fall completely into China's lap. I mean, that's one part. The other part why India remains in this grouping is because it is a true commitment to India's multi-alignment. I mean, the reason that India today can be at the same table when it comes to BRICS and SCO, and then G20 and other being invited by G7, I think that essentially is a kind of a reiteration that India truly does believe in multi-alignment, and today India would like to keep these options open. And I guess this is something that India has always stood for and conveyed to its partners, both when it comes to Russia and when it comes to the West. So I think that there is strategic clarity on the fact that India and a multi-aligned India is perhaps much more useful to the world, to the global south, and perhaps even to the West, because tomorrow when they need to speak to somebody and get people on board and have some negotiations around Ukraine war, the only credible player that can really bring everybody together is India. So I guess I look at it in that perspective. The other thing is that we need to be careful, because let's understand that BRICS actually grew out of the RIC triangle, the Russia, India, China triangle, and the Russia, India, China triangle was a strategic triangle that was put together at a particular time in 1998 when the collective West had put sanctions on India for our nuclear, weapons tests, etc. Now, but you know that so much in geopolitics has changed. So I think that there should be a kind of awareness to identify too much with the RIC, because it's not just Russia, but it is also China there. And India does not officially believe. You have the foreign affairs minister saying again and again that we do not believe that undermining the dollar is in our interest, because today's, if you look at the trade that India has with the West. So I think the thing is that when India goes to these forums, it is a reiteration that, listen, we have strategic autonomy to have an independent policy. We also have a commitment to the global south, and we stand by that commitment. But at the same time, and we would like to be a part of the success story of the global south. I mean, you look at India's diplomacy by and large. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that India in any way identifies with the calls to sort of undermine the current order.
Absolutely.
Because frankly, it is not as India's interest. I mean, if you just look 2 days ago, what happened, you saw that, President Xi Jinping, for example, I mean, he was in his military attire and asking the entire Chinese military establishment to be ready for war.
Right.
Okay. Now, the other thing is that yesterday we heard.
I see
from the
Ambassador Vora cracking up.
Yeah.
That's Xi Jinping is Ambassador Vora's favorite person of interest.
Yeah, so I mean, it's better to not somewhere, leave things to these kind of details. I guess
Yes.
perhaps strategic realism is what the need of the hour is, but at the same time, hats off to Indian diplomacy
Yes.
that at a very, very difficult time has balanced this beautifully, no matter
Yes.
what kind of pressure came up. And finally, Sandeep, allow me to
Yes.
make this final point, which is that I think India's rise, okay, shouldn't really be confused with what the Five Eyes or Two Eyes or One
Yes.
Canada can do to us, right?
Right,
I mean,
right.
today, if you look at whatever is happening in Indo-Pacific, the economic security that
Yes.
everybody wants in Indo-Pacific, none of those plans would work if India was not a part of that, right?
Absolutely,
So I think
yes.
that is also something that we need to understand, and India shouldn't really be, sort of shook in its confidence matrix,
Yes.
okay, with especially somebody coming and putting some allegations. I mean, they make a mockery of themselves, don't they?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Rao. Yeah, Five Eyes shouldn't bother you. India should continue with its march forward. But, I have my colleague Anthony here smiling very knowingly because he's just completed a documentary on the shifting world
with
order.
Ms. Gulati, but
Yeah, yes. And tell us, Anthony, what your learnings were while putting this together. This fact that Dr. Rao mentioned that it actually is a triumph of diplomacy for India. The fact that we've, at a very trying time globally, when you're looking at the world being polarized in East and West, and you have India in the middle saying, I will do business with both blocks because it's in my national interest.
I think I was left with more questions than answers, to be honest, and the questions are quite a few in my case. The first being the fact that while we spoke about BRICS being this place where you can order from the menu
the
and
buffet?
not,
Yes.
and not a fixed menu. But there's also commentary and there's also significant some developments that indicate over the past years that China has come to dictate that menu, especially if we talk
Yes.
about Iran's inclusion. There was a lot of opposition. So
Right.
China emerging as this, BRICS was obviously formed to counter Western dominance, but if you have a Chinese dominance within BRICS, how do we address that? That is
Yes.
question number one. Question
Right.
number two, all of the US's and the West's adversaries in one basket. You already had China, Russia, and now you also have Iran. So how is the diplomatic tightrope? I mean, there was already a very, very thin tightrope, and now it's
Yes.
getting thinner by the day.
Right.
With the confluence of these three factors, of course, you've discussed. And also one important point, I think the eventual goal of a summit is to arrive at a consensus.
Yes.
But too many cooks will obviously spoil it, right? So how will you arrive at a consensus? Especially, of course, G20 was a very different kind of a ball game. But how will you arrive at a consensus when you?
Interesting question there, Anthony. I'm going to ask this to
And where will the
Ambassador Vora.
membership stop? Because there is also a
It's
neighbor
expanding,
vying for that
yes.
membership.
Yes,
So
yes,
I mean,
yes.
these are very important questions.
No,
that,
I started by
Yeah.
saying that the BRICS was a buffet, and Anthony says that too many cooks spoil the broth. Ambassador Vora, the fact that you have three countries or not so positively aligned towards the West, could that actually kind of result in a consensus being eluded at the end of this magnificent summit that of the likes that we never thought possible a few months back?
Let me put it to you as our foreign minister has said. Sir, I know him well. We are both from the same service. He was a few years my junior. I'm an old man. I'm 73. He's much younger. Well, he's a few years younger. And he's a million times smarter than I am. But what he said was very interesting. He said, we are not anti-Western.
Yes.
We are non-Western.
Right.
And if only these jokers across the Atlantic would understand this. Now, we've talked about the bilateral issues that we have. There are 193 members of the United Nations. Which two neighbors, and I've studied this in considerable depth,
Right.
none of the two countries that adjoin each other that are contiguous, that share a common border, don't have problems.
Yes.
You can't name one. United States and Mexico, United States and Canada, Mexico and whoever, they all have these bilateral issues
Right.
going on, border adjustments. So this is nothing to get worried about, that if India and China have these issues and India and its neighbor have it. And as far as Pakistan, or whatever that country's name is, as far as that is concerned, if he says, I was going to get into BRICS, etc., but there is a process, you have to be invited, there's consensus, there's discussions, and forget about it. The Russian Deputy Prime Minister said, yes, it's a great idea, and everybody there started dancing the Bhangra till the fellow went and said, but wait, there has to be a consensus. My own feeling, sir,
Yes.
and this I say with some analysis and deep reflection, even if I offend some people, please forgive me. G20 was essentially a creation of the big economies of G7. They said, look, we can't handle these crises on our own, so we are the Brahmins, so let's bring in the Kshatriyas also. And that meant India came in and Japan came in and this fellow came in and G20 was formed.
Yes.
But now the feeling seems to be that with the West and the East, so to speak, or the North and the South, there are so many divisions present in G20, it's not really able to deliver on the promises that it made. The only country that is very serious there is Bharat, and Bharat does deliver.
Yes.
And therefore, can BRICS be an alternative? My own feeling is, in the years ahead, you will see BRICS emerging as a very powerful and attractive alternative to the Western-dominated global system. In Africa, where I'm special advisor to 3 countries, I know they respect Russia's military strength and its willingness to train them and give them weapons. They take China's money, but they don't trust it. They think it's a ruthless predator. But India is totally respected. Because they say, you guys have never let us down. It's not your system. And when you talk of the world as one family and you welcome Africa into the G20 grouping, thank you very much, Bharat. We trust you, we love you. And I respond that we trust you and we love you too.
Yes.
I mean this, it's not just words. So my feeling is that BRICS is likely to become a competitor. You know, 6 chaps were supposed to, but then Argentina decided that they didn't want to. And I think Saudi Arabia says, look, I'm still having bread.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Vora. I'm afraid we're completely out of time. Thanks for putting that in perspective. BRICS is the formation of the future. We're going to watch that BRICS summit at Kazan very closely, not only because it's Prime Minister Modi there with his mission BRICS, but also because, as our panelists have just told us, BRICS could be the multilateral body of the future. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on the News 9 Plus show.